the old samurai will be back. If the old samurai comes back in action, China has a big problem on its doorstep. Forget global ambitions, it has to look inward. Okay, now that's the problem which China faces. And if you add one more issue to this, now all this is external. We've spoken of China, we have spoken of Japan, we have spoken of Iran, we have spoken of Brazil, we have spoken of Panama and all that. Now let's look at it internally. What are the internal problems of China? Because why is China behaving that way? Because internally China is weak today. And that is something again one must know. Recently they had the two sessions. And for them it was almost a disaster. And again I'll get back to Lee to explain to you what the two sessions meant, because she explains it beautifully. Yeah, here we go.
Coming out of the two sessions that I think are important signals that we shouldn't miss. First, this year's two sessions saw the highest number of absences since Xi Jinping came to power. At the opening session, 113 delegates were absent. At the closing one, 116 did not show up. Except for 2022, when the entire country was under COVID lockdown, Beijing had not seen three-digit absences at the two sessions in the past 14 years. Second, the overall atmosphere of the meeting appeared unusually lax and dull. I didn't make this comment. It's according to Hong Kong newspaper, Xinbao, The Standard. The name of the paper is called The Standard. It described the mood this year as noticeably flat. It says, normally CCP officials are extremely disciplined in front of cameras. They're trained to maintain a composed expression and behave in a very controlled manner. Reporters noticed officials sitting on stage, rubbing their eyes and yawning. Some even pulled out tissues to wipe their noses. Scenes like this were rarely seen in previous years. All right, now let's move to the government report, the government work report delivered by Premier Li Qiang. He delivered a report which contained another signal, or two important signals about China's economy. The first signal is that, for the first time, the CCP has lowered its economic growth target to below 5%, setting it at 4.5% to 5%. At first glance, that may sound like a normal adjustment, but historically, this is significant.
Historically, this, lowering the growth rate or the standard of the growth rate to below 4%, they're looking at 4 to 5%, somewhere around 4% or so, 4.5%. This is historic ever since they can remember. The lowest growth rate set by the CCP.
This is actually the first time in more than 30 years that China's official growth target has fallen below the 5% threshold. In other words, Beijing is openly acknowledging that economic pressure has become extremely serious.
Economic pressure has become extremely serious internally. You have to understand that. And I'm going to prove it a little more, because the whole idea is to connect their external problems and their internal problems and then take an assessment where China stands.
Even the 4.5% growth target is not likely. Many indicators suggest that China's economy is already in contraction territory.
See, everyone who knows China, who understands China, will tell you that Chinese economy is in contraction territory. It's actually going negative, but their propaganda will call it positive. That's a different story.
For the past couple of years. Another revealing signal appeared in the government report, has to do with the real estate sector, which is important in China because it affects almost every Chinese household, as a large portion of family wealth in China is tied to property. Last year, the priority of, quote, stabilizing the housing market ranked 6th among policy goals. This year, it dropped to 10th place. So this shift suggests Beijing has largely given up hope for the real estate sector.
So if they've given up hope for the real estate sector, a major chunk of growth is gone. a major element of our growth is real estate, because real estate in India is picked up. Otherwise, we won't grow. There it's gone, so they're going down. Anywhere you see real estate is an infra are the two things which drive an economy.
And may simply be letting the industry deteriorate. If you think about it, Xi Jinping has been promoting what he calls the new quality productive forces, 新质生产力, focusing on technological transformation as part of China's strategic competition with the United States. His priorities are AI, quantum computing, aerospace, etc. By contrast, he appears far less interested in real estate, an industry dominated by private companies, something that Xi has long distrusted. So, speaking of Li Qiang's government report, there was another rare development. When the People's Congress voted on the report, more than 2,700 people voted in favor, but there was one vote against.
Can you imagine? For the first time, there was one vote against that whole story of that report. For the first time in their history, one chap voted against. Small, tukda of opposition. Where will it go? We don't know. But that's China. Even that one small, the germ of one vote, has created ripples within China. And what's more, in this talk which she gave, you see the full video, she says that Wen Jiabao and Hu Jintao are under house arrest. If that is true, things are bad. Things are bad then. Okay, let's get ahead. Let's get ahead with a few other things about China. Right? First, you'll see their manufacturing, everything. It's a manufacturing powerhouse. As late as last year end, they had said our GDP growth rate will be less. And they put it down in this thing. It's not new. What this report in 2 sessions came out of GDP being 4.5%. Last year itself, they started saying this. Okay. And then their tech transformation is putting the basic other things in a tough spot. Right? There's a growing polarization in the Chinese economy. Now, many normal factories, many normal workers are being all left behind in this high-tech race. Xi Jinping wants high-tech, new quality production and all that. China is betting high on technology, and I'll talk on that separately. That's ideological talk. The technology is now symbiotic with the Chinese ideology. There's a symbiotic relationship. I will talk of that separately one of these days. Tech and China. But when I look at this, you see high tech is going, but what about the low tech mass that is suffering in China? Their manufacturing. They say there are more robots working in China than the rest of the world combined. That's a fact. But it pushes millions of people out of job. And this is coming out of a Chinese handle. So Chinese workers are forced to take a pay cut to compete against robots. Because you don't like a guy, you fire him and get a robot and end of story. So he says, nahi yaar, mere ko aadhe tankha mein de do. Many say that their salary has plunged by 40 to 60% in 2025. What will happen this year, we don't know. So when you say China has so many robots and India has none, it's okay. We will increase slowly. Don't be in a hurry. So India doesn't do anything in a hurry. India built Gulf over half a century. China tried to do the whole thing within 4 years and it failed. Remember this, whatever is built over a long time, slow and steady wins the race. Horse, hare and tortoise, kachua or kargosh ki kahani, which we are taught in our school days. Be patient. Okay. And then this fellow has got a folly. He's trying to build a new city called Xiangan. next to about 70 kilometers away from Beijing. Whole lot of money is going into it. He puts a lot of effort there. He's more interested in doing that than doing anything else. See, हर एक राजा का ना एक पागलपना होता है. He's got his own पागलपना. He wants to make a city called Yongan, and slowly that Yongan will go out. It will be Z city. That's his choice. Okay, and in all this, there's this report: gas prices have gone up. So the people of China are getting hit. The people of China are getting hit more than what people in India are going to get hit. Let's not have doubts about it. Don't think China can do anything it wants and get away. Okay, and now it's realizing. I'll come to that little bit also. Okay, then there's this thing today. There's a Wall Street opinion, Wall Street Journal opinion. The credit engine behind China's economy is sputtering. Very important article. In this article, he gives figures. Their debt to GDP ratio in 2016 was 242%. Today it is 315%. If a crash occurs, China will get wiped out. They're managing it all the best. Everyone says, oh, unka debt to chalta rehta hai. But there's a limit. Somewhere there's a limit. If they don't draw that limit and do things, they'll go. So they run that risk constantly. Remember that. Okay, the credit growth is slowing dramatically. What is credit growth? The amount of money people take to start their shops, build houses, or start manufacturing is dropping. Why? Because banks are struggling to find borrowers that can guarantee or generate returns above 3%. Now, I'll explain this. Whole of last year, China kept dropping their interest rates. Now it's about 1% or less. But if you borrow, you'll get loan at about 1.5% from you. But if you have to repay to the bank, you need at least 3% returns. So that 1.5% is yours. 1.5% you pay interest over the thing. That means Chinese businesses today are surviving on 1.5% profit. They can't. So people are not taking loans. If they don't take loans, there's no expansion in manufacturing, it will collapse. But if there is expansion in manufacturing, there's more competition. And if there's more competition, why there's more competition? There's no domestic consumption. If domestic consumption is not there, they have to export. So more competition. That means you're going to sell out cheaper. If you sell out cheaper, okay, and you go and export and sell out cheaper, you're hoping that the government will give you subsidy. If the government gives you subsidy, the government takes the subsidy, gives you subsidy as a manufacturer, but takes that money from the common man through bonds, and that bonds never get repaid. That's the problem. I'm putting it in my own words. So Beijing is China is in a huge squeeze. People don't understand this. Okay, all this nonsense which I've written is this. If you have excess capacity, it will lead to falling prices. So your GDP growth reduces, nominal GDP reduces, all this thing. Then there's one interesting book which has come out by this chap called Wang Jialu. He's the deputy director of the National Economic Research Institute. So I'll just read out what he says, 2 paragraphs. Okay. China's excessively low consumption, which is 21 percentage points below the global average. Our consumption is 60 plus, theirs is only 40. Ours is a consumption driven economy. Theirs is an export driven economy because no one consumes. Okay, China's excessively low consumption is intrinsic to its growth model. The problem is not simply a shortfall in aggregate demand, but a deeper imbalance in its composition. Investment has been excessive while consumer demand has remained severely weak. This is a Chinese planner telling you, and they can't fix it. Now, Wang challenges a widely accepted policy assumption in Beijing that investment demand can reliably compensate for insufficient consumer demand. And when you keep investing, putting factories up, they'll produce. It doesn't matter. Someone has to buy it. But it doesn't matter. You don't boost up your consumption demand. It's gone. He argues that this logic, influential in Chinese macroeconomic thinking for many years, has been applied far beyond the temporary and limited circumstances in which it might be justified. He suggests prolonged use of such measures has helped entrench an economy that is overly dependent on government led and state directed investment while leaving household consumption usually low by international standards, and they can't come out of it. See the internal problems of China. And their population is falling, mind you, demographically. They have political problems today. And they have economic problems which they can't resolve. What are we talking of? What China are we talking of that will go? Look at the demographic problem. By 2050, there's one thing which I saw and I thought I'll put it out. The country will have lost 200 million people. Though you might think it is 200 lot of time, 25 years ahead. 40% of them, 40% of the people who will then remain will be over 60. Many of these over 60 people will be bad health. I know, I am 70 now. I am in the best of health for a 70-year-old, but I still have to go to the doctor every second month. For the past 3 days, I've been running around getting my tests done. China's demographics are a ticking economic time bomb for the country. It's ticking, and this is conservative. In my way of thinking, I've been saying 2030 you'll see a different China. Then they're not allowing their private enterprise to move up. Any private enterprise which goes up is killed, like Jack Ma. Why? They want to control. That itch for control, like America wants to control oil prices, China can't do anything outside. So China can do internally, they want to control our private enterprises, which is killing their private enterprise. And then of course there's PLA and 6 incapables. I wrote an article on this 3 years back in Eurasian Times. Have a look at it. Just type out PLA and its 6 incapables. Just write this heading and put it. You'll see my article in Eurasian Times. Says an Indian general. I've listed these. Today, what is their problem? They have no leaders. The PLA leaders are not there. 100 generals sacked. And who are there? They are not loyal to Z. There's a problem between Z and PLA. I've spoken of it many times. They have poor equipment. We know that. We spoke about the poor equipment. But look at the other thing. I also told you that China was exporting equipment to Iran in 1980. From then they've been exporting their equipment. Today, who will buy? Today, who will buy their equipment? After all these failures and all these wars, what about their reputation? What about the actual efficacy of that equipment? After all, that equipment will be used for your own defense. Can you trust it? What is the political confidence of the Chinese political system in their weapons? It's not one thing when you talk of China. And why China is not active in this Iran war. Please understand, there's a major problem. Then they have conscripted personnel who serve only for 2 years who can't fight. And they're making new organizations with new roles and new battlefields they don't even know how to handle. That is why they disappear from everywhere. Last but not the least, what's the importance of geography? Look at this. The US geography does not permit it to be attacked by anyone because there's got ocean this side and the ocean that side. It's got a 2-ocean front. No one can, and 5,000 kilometers either side, no one can come. Canada is its friend. Mexico is also its friend. Anyway, it has defeated Mexico. You go to the Mexican wars of the last century, you will realize it. 1800s and 1900s. There's no threat. Look at Iran. Iran is fully finished, but it has Gulf of Hormuz it can hold. it gets power. Look at India, it jets into the Indian Ocean. You get power because you can project your power here, you can project your power here, you can project your power here. And on the north, you have Himalayas, no one can come today. Earlier also, they couldn't come. We faltered in 1962. That's your power, the power of geography. I've just given you three examples, contemporary. USA, which can't be touched from either side because of its two oceans. Iran gets its power from Strait of Hormuz. Everyone today is saying Strait of Hormuz, Strait of Hormuz, Strait of Hormuz. He can hold the Strait of Hormuz and he's holding everyone by its their, you know what, testicles. Look at China. China is the prisoner of geography. If it wants to come anywhere here, it has to transit all this distance, 6,000 kilometers and come, or overland. Okay. Why is USA finding it difficult to overpower Iran here? Because it is not on that theater. It is an out of continent power, out of area power. To project power from USA to here and defeat a country like Iran, it's finding it difficult. You think China will be able to do it? China has run away from here because it's got problems. For China, the biggest problem is around its own neck, the first island chain. It's got a poor geography. The South China Sea is shallow. Submarines can't go through. Its carriers can't go through. It might have the biggest navy, but it can't go through the first island chain or the South China Sea without being detected. They can die trying, but they'll not succeed. It's important to understand this geographic factor of China, which imposes tremendous limitations on Chinese power. And they have a population. In fact, their rivers, their waters are all polluted. They don't have enough water. So overall, when you look at it, the limitations of China are so high, whether you look at it geographically, whether you look at it militarily, whether you look at it, politically, whether you look at it through international relations, whether you look at it through China-Iran relations, China and rest of the countries' relations, China and its best friend relations. If you look at this whole story, what do you see? A China which cannot be active in the Iran war. It cannot be. And whichever way this Iran war goes, believe you me, China will lose. In fact, my assessment, it is lost. Just see, today Trump speaks to Mr. Modi, Pezeshkian speaks to us. We speak to Mr. Narendra Modi speaks to MBS, MBZ, all whoever जितना भी MB है वहाँ उनके साथ बात होता है. Right? Everyone wants to speak to him. Everyone says, hey, you take oil, you take. There's no problem, no? But is anyone speaking about China like that? Today, it's left out of battle. So, I thought I'll put across all this to you.